Hi, welcome. We're excited today to talk about something that is really becoming a hot topic both in science and in the natural health arena, and that's peptides. Now, you've probably seen info come up about peptides in your social media. So, we're going to be talking today about some of the newest findings and some of the literature. I'm Dr. Molly Force, and this is Dr. Rosalie De Lombaert, who's joining me today. And we are naturopathic physicians and really specialize in functional medicine here at Prosper Natural Health, located in Port Townsend, Washington. Now, we do a series of doc talks to invite our community to kind of dive a little bit deeper about certain health topics. We try to release these about monthly, and they're found on our website at prospernaturalhealth.com. So check out our archive of lots and lots and lots of good health info.
So, peptides are just a hot topic right now, especially in the media. There's just been a big uptick in just discussion about what these are. A lot of news articles, influencers talking about them. So here's just a selection of some of the news articles just from this week, ultimately. Like, what are peptides? What's the FDA doing about them? How do they work, right? And so we are here to kind of debunk some of the myths and then provide a lot of the scientific backing, what's in the evidence base in regards to these peptides, more than just what the media shares. So peptides we've got to think of as just, all right, what are they chemically, biochemically? They are a type of protein. They're a type of small protein. The amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, and peptides are a couple of those amino acids together. They're derived from natural sources, animals, plants, marine organisms, microorganisms, algae, and they have diverse physiological roles as hormones, neurotransmitters, growth factors, antimicrobials. That's what makes them so interesting in the medical world is that these tiny little proteins actually have a far-reaching effect in bodies. They can affect multiple body systems, of course, cardiovascular, endocrine, immune, nervous system. Some of the big examples, if you've done any research or read any of the media articles on peptides, you've of course heard of insulin and semaglutide, one of the GLP-1 agonists that's out there now, including other ones, these newer peptides known as BPC 157, GHK, copper. We'll go into all of these later on.
So,
So, oops, sorry. Go ahead,
oh,
Molly.
With with these peptides, what we see is that there's these bioactive components of these, and so that means that they can be used both from our food ingredients that we're eating, and then these have implications, of course, for medications and then even cosmetics. So what we're starting to see is this review and approval of more peptides, but there are so many kind of in the marketplace right now that have not been approved. And what we see in general is we've got between 85 and 100 that have been actually approved by the FDA for all kinds of different reasons, everything from rare diseases and cancer, heart disease, infectious diseases, neurologic conditions, those kind of things. And we're starting to see these new products roll out. Many of them have not gone through clinical trials yet, and many of them have only been tested, if they have been tested, on the animal model rather than a human model. We're seeing this in a big way in our anti-aging and skincare health models, and then also in the health models that are really focused on muscle building, repair, athletic performance, and then hormone regulation. So politically, we're seeing that there are 19 previously restricted peptides that are quickly now being fast tracked by the FDA advisory panel to meet and decide if they're going to be safe. So this is very cutting edge information. And for us, looking at some of these different chunks of proteins and how they can be implicated for health is very interesting. So we really don't know what the safety profile long term is looking like for a lot of these peptides. So it's still in this experimental phase because we don't have FDA approval. And we see when we go to buy these peptides as a practitioner, if they're purchased, they'll say on them for research purpose only, not for veterinary use or even human use. So this is something that's being used definitely kind of outside the typical clinical box, and often is marketing for certain either tissue repair or to help muscle growth and recovery, or as a cosmetic, anti-inflammatory skin sort of cosmetic product. So we do see, though, that peptides have this really phenomenal potential for their therapeutic action. So we don't want to just say, oh, because they haven't been totally researched, they shouldn't be, reviewed. So there are many peptides out there that are being reviewed right now within the scientific world. And we're just waiting for some of these studies to really unfold and tell us about how safe they're going to be. So remember, a lot of these studies will start with animal model studies, and then once that's considered safe, it'll go into a human testing. And so really, we're also always thinking about what about long term? What are we looking at long term for the outcomes? And that's still a big question mark for several of these peptides.
So we, like Dr. Molly said, we do these public doc talks around once a month. And one of the prior doc talks that we did is on a type of peptide known as GLP-1 agonists. This is a type of prescription that also has had a big media presence in the last year and a half. Semaglutide being one of the names of these GLP-1 agonists. So if you want to know more about those, they've been used for diabetes for a while, the recent kind of FDA approval for weight loss. We have a whole doc talk on those.
So we're going to be jumping into some of the primary literature because that's one of the things that we just love to do to kind of update you guys on what is coming out and what we're going to be looking for in the future from the scientific community, which will help us really gauge what's going to be healthy and safe for our community. So many of you know about GLP-1 peptides as well. We want to give a quick nod to this study that's come out pretty recently regarding tirzepatide, which many of you may know as the non-generic name, which is Mounjaro. And this is looking at Mounjaro, tirzepatide, versus semaglutide, which is our Ozempic, and has been, both of these medications have been approved for weight loss as well as type 2 diabetic patients. So this is quite a big analysis here where it looked at 4 different studies with a large amount of patients. We're looking at several thousand patients, and we're looking at how the tirzepatide ends up performing against that semaglutide. And what they saw there in these studies is that tirzepatide did show a better impact for patients who are looking for weight loss than the semaglutide. And so we do see also with that there are less side effects with that tirzepatide. And this kind of clinically makes sense to us as physicians because we saw the semaglutide roll out first, and then tirzepatide was kind of the second iteration, and it actually has an extra chunk of proteins, a peptide chunk that it's working with, and so it impacts different receptor sites as well as our GLP-1s.
Thanks, Dr. Molly. So the meat of this doc talk is in regards to these newer peptides. So these newer peptides are not FDA regulated at this point. They're in review, and there's just this kind of gray market right now of like, what are the applications? How safe are they? What are the names of them? Within the last 10 years, there's been so many of these newer peptides that have kind of come out that it's just going to take some time for high quality research to, yeah, be put out there in the primary literature for our yeah, for our governmental agencies to review. So this is kind of a review article that came out in January of 2026 that just describes, okay, broad sweeping spectrum here. Which are the wound healing peptides that have some application in like tissue repair? We see BPC 157 on there, TB 500, GHK copper, right? We'll talk about these next. There are some other peptides that have growth hormone potential, usually used in like the bodybuilding world or in the sports world. And these often, like I said earlier, are banned in sports because they give you an advantage, right? That's non-physiological. It didn't come from you, it was something else on the outside. So just look through these kind of bolded different types. You might start to see these buzzwords come up in your research, in the media, etc. Other peptides have recovery enhancing effects. And kind of the newest of these newer peptides are neuroactive peptides, which are quite exciting to me in that they will see a study later that describes on an animal model how these neuroactive peptides actually have an application in Alzheimer's mice, that is. At the end of this review article, there is just a big disclaimer. It says, okay, we lack current clinical trials, right? We have to absolutely get more data before we can make broad sweeping recommendations about these peptides.
So here we see another study that just rolled out in 2026 at the beginning of the year on these injectable peptide therapies. And we're seeing once again the need for more evidence to be studied. And we're hoping that this evidence, which should be rolling out over the next few years, is going to help us really determine what the proper dosing and frequency and even duration of some of these peptide therapies are. There are a few different peptides that are highlighted here in this study that you guys can look into if you're interested. And these are maybe names to kind of be watching out for in the media. And we see different things happening in the orthopedic realm. So this is more the muscle, tendon, and bone area, and the support that these peptides can give.
Yeah, so deep dive on one of these most popular newer peptides, the body protection compound 157. Ultimately, in this systematic review from July of 2025, it describes a bit about, okay, what is the mechanism of action? How does this BPC peptide work? Preclinical studies, which means we're not even in clinical trials yet, right? Shows its potential for promoting healing in musculoskeletal injuries, such as fractures, tendon ruptures, ligament tears, muscle injuries. That's really exciting stuff, right? It's just, again, preclinical. We're still waiting for more data. A lot of promise in this compound, BPC 157, for promoting recovery of musculoskeletal and joint injuries. I've seen a lot out there in terms of a kind of exploratory avenue of considering these as intra-articular injections, so within the joint tissue. So again, keep your eyes peeled for how these might start to have medicinal applications.
Really exciting to us is some of the newer information that's coming out about certain peptides being helpful for brain health. And specifically, when we're thinking about memory care patients, the idea that some of these peptides may be developed and approved at some point to help with neuroprotective options is pretty exciting. So this study looked at two peptides, which you may be hearing more about, TB4 and TB500. And these were shown in this animal model, in this mouse model, to have both an anti-inflammatory effect on the brain and a neuroprotective effect. And specifically when studied with Alzheimer's, these peptides were shown to help with axonal density. So that's the density of the tissues there in the brain that are providing the neural information, the neural highway, if you will. And they also helped reduce, attenuate the beta amyloid plaquing. And that beta amyloid plaquing is what we see do so much damage in Alzheimer's. So pretty exciting, this idea that these peptides may even be impacting our nervous system and helping us with some of these age-related and degenerative conditions that impact neurology and memory.
Another one of these newer peptides is GHK copper, which, when researched, we see it described a whole lot in like this anti-aging medicine in this cosmetic world. That's its whole world in itself. I think I saw some studies on like adding it to fillers, like lip fillers, and the recovery was less. I'm less interested in that stuff. I'm more interested in the fact that it is anti-inflammatory. It's also antibacterial, and that's kind of the up and coming exciting stuff in the medical world. Is just like how can we use these injectable peptides for shifting a disease course, right? So in particular, this GHK copper peptide did show markedly enhanced wound healing in that they noticed that the epidermal thickness or the top layer of the skin healed faster. So, gosh, I could see this really being applied in burn victims or post-surgically. It's just we're still lacking those clinical trials.
Now, in this study, which just came out here in March of 2026, we're looking at CJC 1295 and these ipomorelin peptides. And this is once again looking at these peptides, which are known to help promote this growth in muscle and help reduce excess fat, so help with the metabolism and breakdown of fat, and then promote better recovery from athletic exercise, as well as provide anti-inflammatory effects. So with these, we see this, these anabolic activities for the body that a lot of sports and athletic, focused drive may really be asking for. And it does have some promising pieces with these anti-inflammatory effects. But the concern here is that these may come with a lot of other side effect risk because we don't have the human data and we don't have the profiles for dosing dialed in yet. So there's a lot of warnings around this because it can end up being a really, really dangerous set of tools if used inappropriately. And this may be, what we're kind of, this article is teasing a little bit and calling it like a new era of doping. So instead of using these hormones and steroid compounds like we've seen in the past, now chunks of proteins are being injected. And so we want to think, learn from the past historical mistakes and say, well, for, these athletes that had used these things in the past, a lot of them ended up with all kinds of longer term side effect risks, cardiovascular damage being one, sometimes having mood instability, also long term potentially having issues with diabetes or insulin resistance, and blood cholesterol issues as well. So we really want to be thinking about what it is that we're doing, making sure that we're choosing safe options and at the same time being open to some of these peptides potentially having some really cool positive promoting effects on the body. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with this and definitely watch in, the news and the media about the sports kind of the dialogue that comes out around this and bodybuilding this whole new set of tools that are potentially going to be used both professionally and recreationally. We
So that's kind of the overview of the research. Again, expect there to be a whole lot more research that's coming out and analyzed here soon. In the meantime, as part of this medical clinic, we're not injecting peptides here, right? But what we can think about is some supplement support that's helpful orthopedically for muscle building, etc. And so I wanted to highlight some of the options we have here. We've got our performance peptides, which definitely have high protein content. Remember, these peptides are small little proteins, well digested, right? So if you're trying to build muscle, it's definitely a great idea to bring in the building blocks of those muscle proteins. I also like to, for my joint and muscle pain patients, bring in our anti-inflammatory blends, right? I love this vital nutrients blend with boswellia, curcumin, and quercetin, three really important antioxidants that have anti-inflammatory effects, especially when thinking about chronic joint pain or osteoarthritis. Also, some wild caught marine collagen peptides. Remember, collagen is again a protein, it's a peptide, so we can take that orally, right? Especially in thinking about muscle building and maintaining muscle, especially in the times of life where our hormones decline, right? Lastly, I like to highlight this Arthro Soothe product just because it is kind of your multivitamin. There's some B vitamins in there, multi-minerals for rebuilding joint tissue and ligaments. And so these are just pretty excellent blends to think about, especially in regards to orthopedic complaints.
I'll also just say that clinically, these have been really great supportives for many, many patients. The performance peptides is an interesting one for us to watch kind of come onto the market because it was one of the first peptides that was released that was found actually using a different sort of scientific algorithm where they were searching through these chains of proteins to figure out which ones scientifically might cause a better building of those muscle tissues right after when paired with exercise. And this one that was derived from fava beans had really great potential, and then had some studies done on it, and has been a really excellent one clinically as well for us, for patients, especially some of our patients who are over 65, who are working really hard to do their weight bearing exercise, but may not be seeing a lot of change in their muscles due to their hormonal backgrounds, or just even what's going on metabolically for them at that time in their life. So this has been a really cool new tool, I'd say, over the last 2 years that's come onto the market. So we want to invite you guys to join us for more of these doc talks. We try to stay really up to date about what's being coming in our clinical talks, and then what's being talked about in the media. And we really want to make sure that we take some time to highlight leaky gut or intestinal permeability and autoimmunity and the link between them. And that's going to be one of our next talks. So we invite you to join us for that. If you have any questions that have come up or want to chat with us more about peptides or other health concerns, we're available through prospernaturalhealth.com. You'll also find our dispensary is on there. So our online dispensary is on there if you're looking for anything. And all of our prior doc talks are listed on those on there too. So enjoy those, and we look forward to hearing from you.